Uh, Hello, I'm Suzanne Wolden. I'm a pediatric radiation oncologist at Memorial Sloan Kettering in New York and a longstanding member of PROS. I have the immense pleasure today of interviewing my personal mentor and one of the greats in our field, Dr. Sarah Donaldson. This is, I think, second in a series of recorded interviews of some of the top luminaries and important people in the field of pediatric radiation oncology internationally. So it's wonderful that PROS is putting together this archive of material, and thank you all for watching today. So as I mentioned, Sarah really needs no introduction. Everyone knows Sarah, and Sarah has helped so many of us with our careers. I personally owe my career to Sarah, who has been my mentor now for almost 3 decades. Almost. So I'd like to start, Sarah, with you just going way back to the beginning and telling us about your interesting path into a career in medicine and into radiation oncology. So tell us how it all got started back then.
Well, it was a long time ago. So my introduction to health care, I would say, started perhaps when I was a little girl, because before I was old enough to get a work permit, I worked as a candy striper in a local hospital and doing, community service. And then when I was old enough to get a work permit, I worked at the county hospital as a nurse's aide. And I did that on Saturdays and Sundays. And I did that for a long time, I don't know, a couple of years maybe, and learned a lot about what went on in the hospital and learned a lot of skills. And then when I went off to college, to university, at that time, girls that went to college generally became either teachers or secretaries or librarians or nurses. And those are kind of the 4 fields that young women went into. And it was a natural for me to choose nursing because I had had some exposure to the hospital and I felt comfortable there and I liked it and it was all very exciting to me. So I went to university studying nursing, and I did that at the University of Oregon, and I graduated with a Bachelor of Science and a registered nurse degree, and then took a job. And I was full of energy and excitement and curiosity and always looking to explore new things. And at that time, I was at the University of Oregon, what's now called the University of Oregon Health Sciences Center. And I was offered a job to work with a young surgeon who had just been recruited to the University of Oregon to start a cancer program. And he needed a right arm assistant. And so he asked if I'd like to work with him. So today, I think we would call, his name was Bill Fletcher. And I think we would call that field the field of surgical oncology today, although at the time, there wasn't a field called surgical oncology. But he was instrumental in setting up the cancer program at University of Oregon Health Sciences Center, getting them into cooperative groups, working with, at that time, the surgeons took care of all the patients with solid tumors. This is before the era of medical oncology, and radiation oncology was existed, but it was a small field. And so he was pivotal in doing clinical trials and setting up the clinical trials network at Oregon. And I was his helper and worked with him in the operating room and made rounds with him and worked as a data aide and filling out these forms to send him into the clinical trials. Said, guys, there's this right arm girl. And after a couple of years working with him, it was Dr. Fletcher who suggested I think about going to medical school. And that was had not previously been in my menu of thinking at all. I was perfectly happy having what I thought was the best job in the world. At any rate, Bill Fletcher became very much a mentor to me and really opened doors, and I would have to say kind of shoved me through the doors, enabling me to do things that had, in my way of thinking, were not possible. And that was the way I went to medical school. I loved medical school. And at the end of medical school, I loved everything about medical school. And at the end of medical school, I had a hard time deciding what I wanted to do. And I found myself very excited about surgery because I thought I wanted to be a surgical oncologist, just like Dr. Fletcher. And then I thought, well, maybe I should do medicine because I don't really think I know enough medicine to make myself really a good all-rounded doctor. And I was so kind of betwixt and between, not knowing what I wanted to do. And I went again to Dr. Fletcher and asked him, well, what should I do? And he, of course, said, well, what do you want to do? And after this struggle for a while, he suggested I think about the field of radiation oncology, which I knew nothing about. And so once again, it was a powerful mentor that gave me an idea and opened a door for me. And I ended up doing a radiation oncology residency. And that, I loved my residency. It was a powerful program for me, filled with opportunities and really terrific mentors. And at the end of that, I needed to find a job. And at that time, it was the time of the mandatory draft for the Vietnam War, and all of my classmates were being drafted. And I felt that I should be drafted too, but the military didn't take women, and I needed something to do. And so I decided that I'd like to do a year of service of some kind. And I thought about working on the ship Hope, and, you know, and I thought about everything kind of aimlessly, not knowing what I wanted to do. And I ended up going abroad for a year under Stanford's tutorial to a place called the Institute Gustave Roussy, where I worked with another powerful mentor, Odile Schweizgut, who was the mother of pediatric oncology in Western Europe. And that cemented my introduction to pediatric cancer, and the introduction to many, many, many terrific cancer doctors, pediatrically oriented, most of them. And I was offered a job at Stanford afterwards and came back to set up a pediatric cancer unit at Stanford. And that's the short story. There's many, 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 you know, avenues of the diversion down that, but that's the short story. It was a story of powerful mentors opening doors and really nudging me through opportunities that I wouldn't have known existed otherwise.
Thank you. I know for my generation, being a female going to medical school was no big deal. We were, you know, we're now 50% of medical school graduates are female, but you were one of the very first women to graduate medical school, and then going on to enter a difficult and challenging field. How was that for you? Was that difficult being one of the female pioneers in medicine and in our field?
Well, the pioneers in medicine part is interesting because I ended up going to Dartmouth Medical School and then finishing at Harvard. But at that time, Dartmouth College was an all-male school. Dartmouth Medical School had been an all-male school and had just begun to think about taking women. But in Hanover, New Hampshire, there were very, very few women in the city and very few women in the college. So that particular year, Dartmouth did an experiment and expanded their medical school class from 24 to 48 students, and they took 6 women, which was really novel. And so I entered medical school with 5 other women with whom we all lived together in one house. It was like a mini sorority in the middle of an all-male school. And we became very, very good friends. So it was not so difficult because I had 5 other wonderful women sisters to go through this experience with. It was difficult in Hanover because the school wasn't set up for women. They didn't have a place for us to live, and they didn't have a place for us to hang our coat. And it was hard to find a ladies' bathroom. And it just, it just wasn't set up for women. But we were very immersed in learning how to be young doctors, and very directed to doing that. And I don't remember, other than the inconvenience of not having a lot of female supplies around and accessibility, I don't remember it being difficult. After medical school, when I came to Stanford, I was the only woman in my class, and there was another woman in the residency who had just transferred back to Stanford at that time. It was Karen Fu. So Karen and I were together, the women in our department. And as you know, Karen was a fabulous colleague and became a very, very good friend. And we just were very busy being junior faculty and doing residence and then junior faculty and doing what we had to do. So it was, perhaps it was a challenge, but really, Suzanne, I was so busy doing my job description that I don't recall anything other than I was totally having a wonderful time learning how to be a doctor and learning how to be a radiation oncologist and then a junior faculty. Every experience was better than the last one.
Well, those of us who followed are very grateful to the outstanding work that women like you and Karen Fu did, because you showed the world that women can not only be good doctors, but they can be amazing, great, best in the world doctors. So you really paved the way, and I think all of us are very, very grateful for that. As we all know, you have accomplished many, many things in your academic career. You've run many of your own trials at Stanford and really redefined treatment for a lot of pediatric malignancies, you know, from Hodgkin lymphoma to brain tumors. But I think a lot of the volume of your work, and there is a huge volume, has been through your role in the cooperative groups. You were one of the early members, maybe founding members of the IRSG, which, you know, later has evolved into what is now the COG-STS. Maybe you could speak a bit about the early days of your cooperative group involvement and what these groups, including COG and ASTRO, you were president of ASTRO, and PROS, since this is for PROS, what these cooperative groups and international collaborations have meant to you.
I learned about clinical trials and the importance of detail-oriented, well-designed clinical trials from my mentors at Stanford, Henry Kaplan, Saul Rosenberg, Malcolm Bagshaw, because they had initiated clinical trials at Stanford as a single institution, and became a strong institution on the basis of their work. When I developed an interest in pediatrics and had this opportunity to go to the Institut Gustave Roussy and work with Odile Schweisgut, I immediately it became clear to me the importance of inclusion and the importance of multidisciplinary participation, because it was not possible to take care of children with cancer without understanding what pediatric surgeons can do, and pediatric radiologists and pathologists, et cetera. And that was the way the Institut Gustave Roussy was run. And so taking a fellowship with Odile in the pediatric oncology department, not the radiation oncology department, but in the pediatric oncology department, I learned how to think as a pediatrician, which my mentor, Malcolm Bagshaw, had told me was going to be the success. If you want to take care of children, you have to think like a pediatrician. And he knew that because his wife, Muriel, was a pediatrician, and he understood that that was important to know what every discipline could do. And then when you're dealing with a rare tumor, everybody throws their lots together and you decide the leading question is, and you work together to answer that question. And of course, the pediatricians have led the way in cooperative groups. And that was from that very thinking. When I was in France working with Odile, I got introduced to PSYOP, because Odile Schweisgut was the founding mother of PSYOP. And it all was centered at the Institut Gustave Roussy. And so various leaders in Western Europe would come to the Institut Gustave Roussy to spend time with Odile, or they would go to PSYOP meetings, and Odile took me to every PSYOP meeting. I started going to PSYOP meetings in 1972. So I met these leaders from Amsterdam and Germany and Spain and Italy, et cetera, because they were all going to PSYOP meetings. And I went to the PSYOP meetings too. And I learned at that time how important it is to work together and understand each other's discipline and respect each other's discipline so you can really move the field forward. At the Institut Gustave Roussy, I met a wonderful lady named Françoise Flamand, who was the mentor to Odile Oberlin. But Françoise ran the sarcoma programs through the Institut Gustave Roussy and then through PSYOP. And we became fast friends, largely because Françoise was trying to learn English and I was trying to learn French. And so every week we ate dinner together, 1 week at my house and we spoke, or my apartment when we spoke English, and 1 week at her home where we spoke French. And so, yes, I learned French that way, or at least conversational French, but I also learned about sarcomas from Françoise and went with her when she was developing the MMT trials. And that's how I met the people who were leaders in Western Europe in sarcoma. So when I came back from France, the Hal Maurer was just beginning the intergroup rhabdomyosarcoma trials. And I was asked, and I was not part of that in IRS-1, but I was asked by the NCI to be an external reviewer for IRS-1, which they had applied for funding to be able to fund what then became IRS-2. And as an external reviewer, I did my job for the NCI and wrote my pink slip. And Hal Maurer, on the basis of that, invited me to join the IRS and deal with all of the problems that I had identified on the pink slip. So that's how I learned to be very careful what you write when you're writing a critique. But that gave me an opportunity to understand rhabdo from the beginning of the IRS. And those protocols, required setting up a staging system and a grouping system and consistency and answering questions that one built on the other, the next. And that's been invaluable, absolutely invaluable. And it gave me lots of friendships that introduced me to not only the leaders in North America, but the leaders in Western Europe, and then expanding beyond that on a broader scale.
Yeah, I think getting to know the international field has been really important to me. And I thank you for introducing me to many of those people and to PROS. I think PROS is just a really wonderful venue for our small specialty to all collaborate on a global scale. You have an enormous legacy, and I think there are so many large parts of your legacy, but the part that I know you are focusing on now and that you feel very passionate about is mentoring. Could you talk a little bit about kind of an overview of your thoughts on mentoring, the importance of mentoring, and give some advice to those of us who are mentees and hope someday to also be mentors?
I've had powerful mentors, and the initial mentor that I had, probably the first person that I would credit, was Bill Fletcher, who opened doors for me, and without having his guidance and assistance, I wouldn't have gone to medical school. I'm quite certain about that. And so when I had the opportunity to join the Stanford faculty, and now we're in a wonderful university and a great training program and fabulous medical students and trainees, it became clear to me the importance and the value that I had, and therefore the importance to those other colleagues, the young ones and all of them, on helping them along the way. And regarding trainees, I made a lot of mistakes along my career. And so it became clear to me that if I could help a trainee, a medical student, or a resident, or a fellow, or another junior faculty to avoid stepping on the landmines that I stepped on, it would be of value to them. And so I went out of my way to try and to pay back in a way, just like Bill Fletcher had helped me. It was intuitive to me that that was the thing to do, is to help the next generation along. After all, they were going to be the people that would be taking care of me when I needed it. I had everything to gain. So I think the interest in mentoring started as a payback, and a payback because I had profited immensely from powerful leaders and powerful mentors that had really helped me. And it was just something that I felt like I owed the field to do.
Well, there are probably at this point hundreds of us who would consider you one of the most important mentors in our careers, generations, literally generations of us in the field. So you have made and you continue to make a huge impact in that way. If this were a live session and we had an audience, I'm quite certain people would ask, what are the secrets to your success? I mean, I know, and anyone who knows you know that you're incredibly bright and you are probably one of the hardest working people I have ever known, but are there any pearls of wisdom or secrets of success that you can pass along to the younger radiation oncologists in our group?
Well, Henry Kaplan taught me that if you're going to do something, you should do it 100%. And he gave 110%. And I didn't want to disappoint him. So I guess I approached every project or everything that I was given with the objective: you're going to take on a job, do it the very best you can, and give it the best you can, and aim for 110%. And so I guess the advice I would give to others is that there's so much to learn and so much to do. It's very important to stay focused and to know where you're going and to set your goal, and then to keep reminding yourself to stay on track and not allow yourself to get blindsided on all these other little diversions, because you need to know where you're going and what you need to do, and set a time frame and discipline yourself to stay on track, and then accomplish your goal. And you learn very early on that if you do a job and do it well the first time, you get asked to do 2 jobs the next time. And that's just what happens. You ask a busy person to do something and they do it efficiently and they do a good job, and they get asked again and again. And so I think it's important. Work-life balance is important. You have to be well-rounded, and you need to stay focused, and you need to be disciplined and carve out what you're going to do, stay on track and do it. And then, I always gave myself, Suzanne, I cut up everything into little segments. So I give myself an assignment for a week or an assignment for a day. And I'd say, okay, I can't go out and play until I finish, doing my assignment. And so if, let's say it was writing an outline for a manuscript, and I'd say, okay, I can't go out and play until I write the outline, or till I do the bibliography, or till I do the methods and materials, or whatever it was. I set little signposts and said, okay, this is what I'm going to accomplish. And when I do that, then I get my reward and I can go do other things. And I think having a life outside of medicine is very important. Being active and having friendships outside of medicine and being physically fit, all those things are very healthy for your work-life balance and your mental stability. But I guess the best tip is to, when you take on a job, don't take on something you can't do. Take on a job, stay focused and do your job.
So really what you're describing isn't a secret, right? This is not a magic potion. You're really just describing hard work and discipline, and you have been such a role model in those ways. And maybe people who don't know you as well as I do don't know that you get up at 5 o'clock in the morning and go for a 5-mile hike in the hills and do a plank for 3 minutes, or it's really, and then, the emails are starting, at 6 a.m. or 7 a.m. and you work incredibly hard. You've been working incredibly hard for a long time, and maybe, that's part of it. There's just no replacement for good old-fashioned hard work and discipline. But obviously you love what you do. If you are not so passionate about your career and your work, I don't think you would be as motivated to do all of this. So is there any way to help us understand or inspire the kind of passion that you've had throughout your career for your clinical work with your patients and for the enormous amount of academic work you've taken on?
I think the most important lesson in being a good physician or a good friend is to care. And certainly when you take care of children with malignancy, you care about each one of them. Like, you get possessive of them there. It's like they're, your patients, and you do your very, very best to take care of them because you care about them. And when you employ those same thoughts about not just your clinical, caseload, but the research project you're on, or the students that you're teaching. And it's not just giving the lecture, but caring about the students and getting to know them and talking to them offline and having coffee with them, or inviting them over or whatever. Just caring about them makes such a difference. And that's what's so much fun. It's our colleagues and our patients and the people that we surround ourselves. It's the socialization that we're exposed to that makes it so much fun. And that's made COVID, difficult for us because we've been isolated and we're not able to hang out in the coffee room and just shoot the breeze with the students or the residents or the junior faculty, or ask them about life, love, and the pursuit of happiness, or all the other things that you really care about. I think it's caring. And that's intuitive. You understand that, Suzanne, and probably all the people in prose understand that as well.
Yeah, I think everyone who belongs to prose is very committed to their work, as you are, and you really are such a role model. We can only aspire to have a fraction of the success you've had, and it must be very meaningful to look back at your long career and the thousands and thousands of lives you've positively impacted, whether it's a child who you've cured of cancer, or a medical student who you've mentored to become, a great physician, and your many friends and admiring colleagues. So you've had such an incredible impact on so many people. So all on behalf of the thousands of us, we are very grateful for all that you've done and that you continue to do. And I personally am very looking forward to seeing you in person at a prose meeting very soon. We can all get together and socialize and appreciate you in person soon.
Suzanne, I would say that those are very kind words, but I would say that it's the immense personal gratification you get from taking care of every child that you help. And we help the huge majority of them. The cure rates are sensational. And in radiation oncology, we help every single person we take care of. But it's that same, and it's that gratification of curing a child. It's the same gratification as watching a medical student come in the door, getting them excited about being an oncologist, getting them excited about going into radiation oncology, getting them feeling the gratification when they want to go into pediatric radiation oncology, and then watching their success. And then when you look around at the big picture of the various people that you've known in your lifetime that are now the leaders in the field, that is absolutely volumetric. Because if Sarah Donaldson impacts Suzanne Wolden, and Suzanne Wolden impacts 30 more people, and those Suzanne Wolden clones go on and take and impact 30 more, it's explosive. And it is so gratifying. I know nothing more gratifying than watching the success of one's own trainees.
That's great to hear, and I think we're all inspired by you, and we all are very grateful for your contribution to the field, to our individual lives, and to the PROS organization. So I do hope that we will all be together soon at a meeting. So I'd like to thank you very much for spending this half hour with us. I'm sure everyone will enjoy knowing a little bit more about you and about your career. So thank you again very much, Sarah.
It's been my pleasure. Thank you, Suzanne.
All right, be well. Bye-bye.